another installment of App Marketing Conversations. Here with Ryan Morel of Gamehouse, Robi Ganguly of Apptentive. I'm Sefferman of MobileDevHQ by Tune. Brand new Apptentive space. Feel like we definitely need the banner behind us.
Yeah, that's true. So maybe we should get an App Marketing Conversations banner.
Oh, hey, you want to do that? That's what we do.
Yeah.
That means we need like a logo and stuff.
Yeah. More work.
Too much work.
So we've been talking about the Apple keynote from the last week. We discussed the phones in your segment. We discussed the watch in your segment. I think the other big piece is Apple Pay. And it seems interesting. I think there's been sort of a lot of questions that came about it. You kind of had a good understanding of how it actually works. You want to give?
I think you had one of the better ones of the three of us.
Yeah.
You explain it,
Yeah.
and probably everybody watching this is going to have a better idea than I do. Like my explanation is, you have your phone, you use Touch ID, and you touch an NFC-enabled thing, and that's it.
But I think the interesting things that you noted that I didn't know was I was like, do the retailers actually have to have a point of sale device from Apple, or does it work with something else? And apparently it's with all NFC touch payment stuff.
Yep.
I think that's really interesting. The fingerprint thing that you mentioned, I think, is really interesting. So what are your first reactions?
I think that of the things they announced last week, Apple Pay is probably going to have the most waves of impact in the future, right? Like the payment space is humongous. The Touch ID stuff, when it came out initially, was interesting, and now it feels like a secret weapon because it's taking your security, your identity, your wallet information, and then turning it into something you can do really quickly. And it feels like Apple already has the most credit cards on file. Very quickly, they will become the biggest juggernaut in payments and commerce that we've seen.
Yeah, and I think, I think that's a super important point. I'm actually super surprised that Amazon never tried this with their Fire phone.
Mm-hmm.
They have a huge amount of credit cards and are incredible at getting people to purchase things. And I just sort of expected them to be able to take that on, and that would have been an interesting first feature for them. What are your first reactions to it?
Yeah, I think I'm with Robi. I think I had two reactions. So one was, it feels a little bit to me like Apple's at a point of building services to maintain their iPhone market share and the amount of money they make from those devices. And that's not like, I'm not saying that's a bad strategy by any means, but that's really what it felt like. Is like, how are we going to keep the golden goose fed and make it fatter? So that's one thing. The second thing, and it was in total agreement with Robi, this feels like a really big thing, and it's probably, I'll just say exactly what you said, it's going to be huge, I think. Just my own personal experience, I had ordered coin, right? And as soon as the Apple Pay thing came out, I was like, why do I want this coin thing again? And I emailed, was like, I want my money back, like, this is done. And they have some of their own issues that partially drove that, but just from a consumer perspective, I think it's gonna simplify how people engage in retail, and probably I actually think the bigger deal will be on the mobile web and within apps. That I think is the biggest, especially from an app marketer and app developer perspective. If you are trying to compete against Amazon, which you brought up, like one of the things that is probably hard for you is closing people as they move through the order process. And if you have the ability to just say, well, just use Apple Pay, like your known and trusted source, I bet conversion rates at order forms go way up.
Right.
That's a pretty big deal, I think, for a lot of small businesses.
Well, I think one thing that is sort of entwined in what you just said is Apple has historically, any transaction that takes place on your phone, Apple's historically been like, we want 30% of that.
Yeah.
That's no longer the case with this, right? And does that actually open the door to a much wider breadth of businesses that will use their phone, use mobile as a place to transact and conduct business? That I think is really powerful.
Yeah.
The other thing that I thought was interesting during the keynote, I think it was Schiller who said this, was he basically took out his wallet and he was like, anything that is currently in here, we meaning Apple, want to own, right? And it was like, that's really interesting foreshadowing of what they could plan to do, right?
Yeah.
And I've long been a believer that the phone, or that anything that's in your pocket should probably be on your phone, right? So there are people who have been working on doors that can be open, but think about that with the Touch ID. That would be super, super interesting as well.
Yeah.
So how can app marketers take advantage of this? Is there anything to be doing there?
Well, I think like you guys both talked about, if you have purchase flows inside your apps that are painful, and in particular if they're powered by Stripe, because Stripe came out pretty quickly thereafter and said like Stripe's going to be able to take Apple Pay and work nicely together. So if you have purchase flows like that, I would run, not walk, I would run towards figuring out when you can use Apple Pay in some form or fashion, how you can hook that up and what that looks like, and start prototyping. Because I think you're right, like conversion rates will go up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the big one. So I also think, so apps and mobile web too. I think this could be a boom for mobile web kind of e-com as well, because mobile web, everyone kind of just keeps throwing away mobile web a little bit, so a lot of people use it. But it's probably still a relatively big deal for e-com, especially small, medium e-com. So yeah.
The last thing that I think was interesting that was confirmed today by Apple was that the Apple Pay product will only be available, the NFC in particular will only be available to Apple Pay, which is a really interesting lock-in. I don't know if that's useful or insightful, but I think it's interesting nonetheless.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one thing that, because we talked about this a little bit in the new iPhone segment, it's going to come out of this, is battery technology keeps getting more important to all of us, not less, right? Like the bigger phones probably will have better battery life. You, with better battery life, can have like better peace of mind that I can use this for things I go out and do and not have to carry my wallet necessarily full of 18 cards, etc. So all that stuff's intertwined.
Yeah, that's totally true.
I guess I don't know enough about like NFC as a protocol for like transferring data, but I mean my question would, from Apple's perspective, if I were them, I would be saying, do we really want to release NFC for the first time in one of our mobile devices and payments at the same time? Like how secure is what does NFC enable? Does NFC enable people to do?
I mean, my understanding is like, and again, I have about as much understanding as you do, but it's NFC is simply near field communication, and it's like if two devices are close to each other, they can talk in some way.
Yeah.
And then there's some standard built on top of that that allows you to do transactions, and then but you could theoretically use it for something else, like locks on doors, right? Like,
Yeah.
Theoretically, some developer could come in with an app that uses Touch ID and NFC and boom, the door's open, but that seems to be locked out.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think so. I think I was making a slightly different, a slightly nuanced view, but I think the other important thing is low energy Bluetooth is much more available. It's accessible for developers on iOS than it is versus Android, just given like the variations in operating systems. So like, as far as I understand, like a majority of kind of the Internet of Things enabled for your house work off of low energy Bluetooth because of that. So that also might be another reason why I said NFC is better for payments, but not for this other stuff.
That's true. Cool. All right. Well, let's do one last question. Of the three topics we discussed, the watch, the iPhones, and Apple Pay, which are you most excited about?
Well, I'm excited to get my phone on Friday.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see a watch in practice.
Yeah.
But I think, as someone who owns a small number of Apple shares, I'm most excited about Apple Pay.
I would say definitely Apple Pay. I think it's going to make a bunch of commerce wake up and realize they can do better, and probably make a bunch of money in the process for us Apple shareholders.
I agree. Thank you.
Let me ask one more question.
One more thing.
So does Apple Pay, and this is just something I've been, like, is this maybe the start? Is this one of the things that enable small to medium-sized e-commerce providers compete with Amazon? Because I mean, like I know for me, like I'll like immediately go to Amazon because I've got my stuff. Like if you can solve for well, we can ship something fast, which I think there's probably lots of people who are getting like, yeah, people can do that now, not just Amazon, and like be high on SEO search results. Maybe that's hard, but like in the payment stuff, that's really the most important piece, right? Yeah, one of the most important. Are we getting to a point where startups can like reasonably compete with Amazon by kind of picking and choosing all these different pieces that Amazon at one point just had a monopoly on?
I think that's super interesting to think about. I'm not sure I totally agree that it could, but I think there's obviously more chinks in Amazon's armor now.
Yeah. Well, I think that if you're inside of Apple, you're definitely thinking that's part of our sales pitch. That's how we're going to get people on board. And I think if you're Amazon, you're looking at that and saying this is a direct attack on our convenience. So more and more of these guys are butting heads on lots of fronts.
Yeah. Which makes Amazon's fire even more important to them and
an even bigger disaster.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, share, watch the others. All of the things that you can do, please do. We'll talk to you next week.